Welcome to Guided. I'm your host, Jodi Reynosa, helping you navigate your divine journey. And with me today, I'm very excited, Kelle Sparta. She is a shaman, she's a spiritualist, she's a channel, she's a psychic, all of the above. Kelle, welcome to Guided.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Jodi. I'm
Absolutely.
excited to be here.
Yes. So we were talking a little bit before the show. I love your name.
Thank you.
Kelle, and Sparta, your last name. It reminds me of a Spartan warrior. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when I got married, I was 21 years old and not very bright. And so when I got divorced 7 years later, I did not want to keep his name, and I didn't want to go back to being the naive girl I had been when I got married. So I picked a new name, and I was very heavy in my warrior self at the time. I was like, do not mess with the Kelle, right? I was just like,
love it.
And so I took Sparta because, I had been using it as a pen name for years. And so it just made sense to take it. And when I got married again, I was like, everybody knows this name, so we're sticking with it.
Yeah. That's so funny. It's similar to me because I got married young as well. And after my divorce, I went back to my maiden name, and everybody knew it as well because of broadcast. Everybody knew Jodi Reynosa. So it just made sense.
Right.
And Reynosa, I mean, it means basically queen bear.
Reina, why would you not queen, keep that?
Right. And then Osa, bear.
Yeah. That's some powerful medicine there.
There you go.
Absolutely. Okay. My father took it very personally when I didn't take my maiden name back. He's like, oh, it's because you don't like me. I'm like, no, it really had nothing to do with you.
Right. Before the show, I was telling Kelle that I've been going through some tough stuff. I mean, yes, as a collective, we're going through some things, obviously. But I always talk about how the external is a reflection of the internal as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm here in Southern Utah. It's the desert. And I feel like it's so symbolic to my journey. I feel like, also Jesus is one of my major guides in life. I mean, he went through 40 days in the desert where he went out and prayed, and he had his own tough stuff going on at that point in time, biblically. I mean, he was tempted by the devil and, all of that kind of stuff. And so I had a major breakdown and then breakthrough. I actually, had my 5-year-old self surface and tell me a lot of things and help me connect the dots with a lot of things. And that's one of your specialties, Kelle, is you help people with inner childhood wounds. And I want to talk about that. But before I get into that, is you say this profound sentence in, I believe it's when you talk about your Inner Peace 101, and you talk about how intrinsically we are so valuable and so worth so much just doing nothing, just being. And that hit me so hard last night. I was just crying my eyes out. I was just like, where's the Kleenex? I mean, the toilet paper. I don't have Kleenex right now. and I just, because there's so much emphasis put on, what do we do? How are we succeeding? What job do we have? All of that. And especially in the religion that I grew up in, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it's always like, how productive are we? Well, what are we doing? And then in my own family, which my dad, came from a military family as well, military on both sides of my family, it was all about the busy bee. How productive are you? Oh, you missed a spot. It was just that pressure. Yeah. And so if I wasn't doing something, I was failing somehow. So just being, that just hit me so hard. And I was like, wow. Because as Kelle and I were talking, an animal, a baby, we don't blame them. We don't, for just being, we talk about how much we love them and care for them. So Kelle, talk about that, please.
Well, so self-love is really the hardest thing for people from challenged childhood backgrounds to really get. When I talk to people about it, I'm like, I teach people how to step into that self-love. And when I say that to them, I see their faces just go blank. They're just like, huh, what? And I'm like, look, self-esteem is feeling like you can get through your day. It's like, I am capable and competent to get through my day. I can handle whatever comes at me. That's high self-esteem. Self-love is, I love myself even when I'm doing nothing, even when I'm serving no purpose to anyone other than sitting and enjoying myself just doing nothing.
Yeah.
And that's when they go, what? Or they burst into tears like you did, right?
Yeah.
It's just this moment of, oh, wow, I didn't even consider it, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many different pieces and parts that happen when you come up in this sort of environment. And, everything from a really skewed way that you learn to see the world, where, you're not the center of your own reality, where
Yeah.
somebody else is the center of your reality and you're a reflection of what they expect.
Right.
And that then translates to other people in your life. And, you become an empath, which is a safety mechanism to read everybody around you to make sure nobody's angry. And then you become, subject to all of their crap.
Yeah, it's totally codependent. I mean, like,
It's
you were
energetically
talking about,
codependent is what it is. Yes. Yeah.
You were saying something as I was reading on your website. And by the way, again, kellesparta.com, everybody. Go to her website. It's amazing. And you will see all the different things that she can help you with. But one of the things you talked about, which I totally have done, such a big part of my life, and I'm trying to just shift that. But like you said, you talked about tracking people as either they walked in the room or you basically, oh, what's the word I'm looking for?
Monitor them.
Yeah, you monitor them. You observe the room energetically constantly, like, oh, are they in a bad mood? Or this actually just happened to me a month or two ago. I was staying with some friends and I could tell that one of them was not in a good mood. And immediately I looked to myself, did I do something?
Mm-hmm.
I had to start that re-scripting in my mind. No, this is not about me. This is within him, like this is, maybe there's something within his day. And that was something that was another aha. I'm like, okay, good. You're not placing it on yourself again,
Right.
And so that's the thing, like you talked about, it's like, as you're growing up, you become this extension of either your parents or a teacher or somebody, and you start taking on their baggage and their crap and you place it on yourself, and then that carries into your relationships. And oh my goodness, how do you help people kind of overcome that and stop the wounding?
Well, so there's a whole process to it. And I found this process because I had to do this for myself,
Mm-hmm.
right? My mother was an alcoholic, my father was a rageaholic, and there was just no, I was expected to be her partner from the time I was born, basically. And so, there was this intense pressure to be an adult from a very early age. And so I had to figure it all out. And what it's come down to, thankfully, I have an engineer brain. And so what I'm particularly skilled at, and this is one of the things that people who listen to my podcast have been telling me, they're like, I thought it was for beginners when I started it. And then all these experienced people were coming to me going, oh my God, I love your podcast. And I'm like, why? I'm talking about beginner stuff. And they're like, oh no, we love that you're stitching together all of the things that we've learned over the last 15 years and you're making it into this big worldview. And I was like, I am? I had no idea I was doing that. Okay, great. But that's my engineer brain, right? And that's how I ended up figuring this stuff out and then laying it out and sort of identifying what the pieces are, right? So piece number one is finding emotional safety. That's the first thing you have to do, because if you are still in a state where everything looks like an attack, then you won't be able to make change, because change requires you to step out of your comfort zone, which means it makes you uncomfortable. And if you're in a state of hypervigilance, if you're not feeling safe, then that discomfort gets translated as danger. And you shut down your process and you don't move. Right. And that's why people have such a hard time starting the change process, is because they haven't addressed the emotional safety piece. And so that's the very first step that you have to do. And that's what we do in Inner Peace 101, right? which is what you were talking about before.
Yeah.
And in there, you're addressing fear and anger and or fear, worry, dread, judgment, inner and outer. And you're working on building internal support structure and courage.
Oh yeah, beautiful.
Right. And so that's what that first step is about. And then you go into the next step, which is when we go through challenging experiences in our childhood, it deepens our sense of self. It deepens our character, our identity. It gives us more ability to endure and to survive and to trust that we can do those things, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a great gift. And on the other side of that great gift is that as it's stretching that container, we get tears and holes in the container. And so we lose the ability to separate ourselves from others. Mm-hmm. And so the second part of the process is to solidify that energetic container and to complete the process of individuation. Mm-hmm. Which means to be able to tell where you end and other people begin and to be your own self. And the parts of that are to claim your space, to say, this is my space, not your space. I'm not giving way for you. It doesn't matter. You have your right to your space. I have my right to this one. Setting your boundaries, which is, yes, I know you want to cross over my boundary, and no. Well, part of the word no did you not understand? Here, let me thump you on your forehead until you get it, right? That's setting your boundaries and reinforcing them, right? Because a lot of people will set the boundaries, but not reinforce them. Mm-hmm. And then to own your power, which is part of that is going to be having to drain that well of rage, right? Because we have a huge well of rage from not having gotten what we wanted and not having been taken care of the way we wanted and all these things. And so you have to drain your well of rage before you'll give yourself permission to have your power. Because if you don't, you're afraid that when you get upset, you're going to destroy everyone around you, right?
So true. I was reading that last night too, and I'm like, oh yeah. When people get scared of the dragon or the tiger that comes out, you're like, oh, get back in the closet.
We call her putting the bitch in the box. My shaman, when he was working with me, said, do you think you could put the bitch in the box and maybe the box could live in the attic? She doesn't have to be the person who greets you on the front porch. And I was like, maybe. I'll think about it.
Well, and the thing is people get so like, wait, where did that come from? You're like, oh, never mind that.
Right. And we feel bad, right? Yeah, we feel really bad because we're incredibly loving and caring humans. And all we really want is for everybody to be happy, including us.
Right.
And, we feel bad, but it happens, right? And so that's why you have to drain that well of rage, because otherwise you don't give yourself permission to have full access to your power. Yeah. Because, if you think you're doing damage now, imagine what you would if you gave yourself all your power, right?
Right.
And so, own your power. And then the next piece is internalize your sense of value. And that's what we were talking about with understanding that you are intrinsically valuable. You don't need to get validation from others in order to feel valuable. You don't have to get approval and acceptance and things like that, right? Yeah. That's the next piece there. And then learn to love yourself, right?
Right.
And that's that piece. And so when you do those 5 things, claim your space, set your boundaries, own your power, internalize your sense of value, and love yourself, those 5 things create individuation. Yeah. And they solidify that sense of self. Now, if you want a quick test to see if you have holes or tears in your identity, the easy way to do it is to say, okay, when you go to make a decision, do you have to build up a lot of steam and build it up and build it up and build it up and then immediately pull the trigger to make the decision? Or if you wait, all the energy leaks out and you have to start over again. If that's what happens, then you have holes and tears in your identity field.
That's a good test. Yeah.
If you don't, then you can make a decision and hold it for years and pull the trigger whenever you're ready, right? And that's the difference.
So almost like somebody has to build up the energy, and then maybe they'll even procrastinate because they feel like they're going to make the wrong decision.
Right.
it's like, oh gosh, I don't know. I have to, or they're perfectionistic about it. Like,
All the time.
oh, I have to
Yes.
pick the right one, the exact right one. But really there is no right one, because you're
Right.
going to learn from every decision.
Right. And the world is constantly changing, and perfection
Exactly.
is a state of stasis.
Right.
And so when something is stillness and the world is constantly changing, it can only exist for a split second. And why are
Right.
you making yourself miserable over a split second?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So that's step 1 and 2. And then step 3 is to dig out all of the buttons and the triggers that send you flying. Right. And so that process is about, that's the process. It's so funny because people try to do that one first. They go to workshops and they're like, I need to get rid of my triggers. And they go to the workshop and they try to get rid of their triggers, and they get triggered and they can't get rid of their triggers, right? And that's because they didn't do the emotional safety piece, and they didn't do the solidify their sense of self. And so they crossed their own boundaries without even realizing it, and they felt unsafe, and all of these things. And then they get frustrated and they feel like it can't work, so they're not going to do it. And that's why I'm that's why I'm so passionate about getting the word out about this, is that I know people are out there trying to do this and they're in pain. Yeah. And I get it. I was there. I've lived it in depth, in great, painful, bloody, gory detail.
Yeah.
And I know how hard it is, and I don't want people to get frustrated and give up. If this part didn't work for you, where you were trying to dig your stuff out, it's because you haven't built the foundation, right? So much of this is about building foundations, and so much of our lives were about flying by the seat of our pants and trying to make it work as we go, that we kind of suck at building foundations. We really do. And unless it was built into our financial life, for our career or our business, or if we got somebody else structuring it or whatever, we have a really strong tendency to try and skip steps.
Yeah.
And as such, we tend to hamstring ourselves financially as well. And so, the one thing I would say is if there's a struggle financially, that, really look at what are the foundation building blocks of the success of whatever it is that you're doing, and go back and really do those. Don't half-ass them, do them fully, because that's the piece that opens the doors to the success. I know you want to get there yesterday. I know you want to be the person who did it faster, cheaper, more bionic, whatever. But if you don't get there, it doesn't matter how fast you got there. Right. So, slow and steady wins the race. And, what you don't recognize is that doing the patient thing early on actually allows you to do the amplified thing further on, when you are building the foundation for the big business or the big structure or the big whatever that you want. When you're building that in steady steps, it will eventually kick in, and it's an if you build it, they will come sort of thing, right?
So true. Yeah. So you're saying look at the pillars of success first, because those are like the entry points of expanding that success.
Yeah. So if you haven't filed your taxes for 4 years, and you haven't, and you're running a business and you don't pay estimated taxes, or you don't do your accounting until the end of the year when you absolutely have to turn it in, if you don't have any savings, if you don't have any idea of how your money is spent, if you don't choose wisely how you track your money, even down to if you have coins all over your floor, and your money is shoved in your purse in weird ways and, just random places. If you are not being a good steward of your finances, then you will not have a lot of finances. That's how that tends to work. Yeah. And it seems weird, but that's how it is. It's literally it's about how we take responsibility, right? So the responsibility piece is the key. Is when you take responsibility for it, then you pay attention to it. When you pay attention to it, then what you focus on expands. Right. Yeah. Then we'll go back to the law of attraction, right? Yeah. So when you take responsibility for it, you focus on it. When you focus on it, it expands, and go figure, you get more. So that's the that's the piece. And sometimes it takes some effort to get there.
Yeah. Let's get into some really deep, high level things.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of times people, especially who are into the metaphysical and the spiritual, oftentimes it can be really difficult, especially for me. It's like a surgeon doing their own surgery. You know, they like, for me, for instance, I can recognize on many levels how to help other people. When it comes to myself, oh my gosh, like I can identify on a theoretical level, okay, this chakra's blocked on me. Okay, this wound still needs help. But then to actually do the nitty gritty steps, I might say, okay, I'm stuck here and I don't know how to get past that block.
Right.
Or one of the things that, before we get into that, one of the things that came to my mind as we were talking about the different steps in like the Inner Peace 101 is, do you find that there are people who are addicted to certain things that they, or maybe so numbed out that they can't even get to the identification parts of certain things? So for instance, they might be so addicted to a drama piece or a codependency piece where they can't, yeah, exactly. They number one, maybe they're not able to identify it. Or two, they don't even want to get out of it. Maybe, I don't know, but I know people, like I have a stepmom who I don't want to get into, because she may watch this, but there was a passing of a loved one, I will say that. And there was addiction, and there was just so much layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of wounding that there was just no awareness of looking deep to get out of it.
Well, sometimes our stories are really strong. You know, when you've been telling yourself the same story for 30 years, you know, it's hard to see past it. My mother was a nurse. And she would tell me this story about my grandmother when she was a child, when my mother was a child. She got hit over the head with a baseball bat by the kid down the street, and she came to the door and she's bleeding from every, you know, she's head wounds are just bloody. And she's standing in the door and she's bloody, and my grandmother is standing there. She opens the door and she goes, "Don't let her come in. She'll get blood on the floor. Don't let her come in. She'll get blood on the floor," which of course my mother took very personally.
Yeah.
I mean, her father had to literally pick her mother up and move her out of the way to get to my mom, to get her to the hospital. And she was angry about it her whole life. Yeah. But at no point did my mother, who was a nurse, recognize that that's a classic shock response. To repeat something over and over again that is trivial, to not be able to process what's going on, and to just speak something. I had the same thing happen when I was a kid, and another kid fell, and his girlfriend was just like flipping out, and she's like, "What do I do with the sodas?" Because I told her to go get somebody to help. She's like, "What do I do with the sodas? What do I do with the sodas?" Until I took the sodas from her, she could not move. And so it was the exact same response. And so, you know, but my mother, even though she understood shock response, she never restructured that story in her head to be her mother was in shock, not her mother didn't care about her. Yeah. And so we tell ourselves these stories and we groove them so deeply. And sometimes we need somebody to come in from the outside and say, you know, this might have a different interpretation, right? That's so true. Yeah. And you know, the other piece that happens is people get stuck in their victim. I call it the misery box. You know, you get stuck in your misery box, and it's like your misery box is your friend. You've known it for a long time. You're comfortable there. You know where all the walls are. You know, it's very tight and small, and you know, it's very comforting, and it's miserable. But you know how to be miserable, and you're really good at it, right? And it's like, I have mastered the skill of misery, and when I feel uncomfortable, I'm going to come here, right? And at least I'm good at this. I'm allowed to be this, right? There's a permission piece to it, right? And I find that a lot of people get stuck in their misery. And you know, I once walked a guy all the way through the process of completely changing his life, getting absolutely everything he wanted. And then he looked at it and went, yeah, okay, I got everything I want. I don't know what to do with that. And then he systematically destroyed it,
Ah,
right? Because he could
yeah,
not wrap his brain. This was early on in my career, obviously.
yeah,
I've gotten
yeah.
past that now, but he couldn't wrap his brain around the idea that he could be happy, right? He was
Oh,
so attached to his misery box. And there's only so much that I, as a coach, as a shaman, can do
yeah,
for someone who
yeah.
is unwilling to let go of that identity, right? There's, the thing that we have to recognize, and this is one of the things that happens with people who are early on in their journey, is that they tend to come to healers and go, do me, right? you know, like,
Fix
fix
me.
me. You
Uh-huh.
know, I'm all screwed up. Just fix me, right?
Uh-huh.
And they tend to abdicate responsibility, right? They're just like,
Right.
no, it's yours.
Yeah,
You fix
yeah.
me. You're the healer. Right?
Uh-huh.
And I get it to a certain extent. If you're walking into an area where you don't understand things, then you hand over yourself to the person who does. But there's also a piece that is just this desire to be taken care of. We
Hmm.
didn't get the childhood that we wanted. We didn't get the nurturing that we wanted. And so when we come into the spiritual world, we come in looking for the mommy to
Hmm.
nurture us and heal us. And that's just not how it is, right?
Right.
We have to be the mommy who nurtures and heals ourselves,
Yes.
which a lot of people, I fought against it forever. I really did. When I got divorced, I moved into a series of homes where I knew that even if I couldn't pay the rent, they would never throw me out, right?
Mm.
It was my subtle way of just not having to take care of myself, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the day I looked at the last person who had done this for me and said, thank you. And I need to move out now because I need to stand on my own 2 feet.
Yeah.
I need to be responsible. I need to have consequences for if I don't pay my rent, because I will never have money if I don't. Right.
Right. Right.
Because it was my way of making people show me they loved me, is to
Mm.
be without enough funds to do that. Right.
Yeah.
And then they would take care of me. I'd be like, oh, they love me,
I know.
instead I'm like, wow, this is just not okay.
Yeah.
So, and eventually, and most of the time I would pay the rent. It was not like it was going months and months and months without paying rent, but, and I would eventually catch up, but it was that moment of just knowing that they got me covered.
Right.
It's that,
Yeah. That
that
security
little,
net.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was that. And eventually I was just like, I gotta step out of this. I
Yeah.
gotta leave this behind. And it's one of those pieces that you really have to do. And it was the hardest thing I ever did, because I had to admit that my mommy wasn't coming to save me, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
That I was going to never have the nurturing mommy I wanted,
Hmm.
right? That's very sad.
I
I
know.
burst into
Yeah.
tears, and
I know.
I literally, I had to grieve it,
Yeah.
right? But it was the best thing I ever did. It was the hardest thing in this whole process that I've ever done.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing I've ever done,
Yeah.
because it opened up a whole new world for me, right?
And that's part of this process for me has been, I have to rebirth myself
Mm-hmm.
and then learn how I need to be my own parent, to self-soothe myself, give myself everything that I need. And yeah, it's so tough because you are grieving those things that you wish you had.
Yeah.
You wish your parents would have given you. But then at the same time, you're doing that forgiveness process because you're like, you know what? They actually did the best they could, because wow, what their parents gave them was kind of worse than what they did too. And so it's just kind of like what's been handed down through the
Yeah.
generations.
Yeah.
And you at the same time are breaking the cycle of so much. So it can be tough. Going back to what you said about how you helped this guy and you kind of untethered so much for him, and he was like, wait, I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
I've done that so often with friends and family members. There's been a certain point where they have been ready, but oftentimes they haven't been ready. Now, with me, on the other hand, I feel like there are times when I have been ready and I haven't been ready, but there are times when I'm like, show me the way, please. Cause I have a blind spot that I am not seeing and I don't know why I'm not seeing it. And I'm so frustrated because I'm in this misery that I know there has to be a way out. And I don't know where, why, how I'm not seeing it, and that I feel like is the frustrating part for me,
I have such a funny story about that, actually.
Please tell me.
Oh my God. So for about a year and a half, I was asking Spirit, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Right. And it kept coming, it kept coming back with the exact same answer. Be who you are. Be who you are. Be who you are. And somehow in my head, are you familiar with the with the hugging saint Amachi?
No.
Okay. Well, she goes around and she hugs people, and people think she's amazing and whatever. So, but all she does is hug people, and she's got this whole group of people who just follow her, volunteers who follow her around the world, helping her to do her work. And in my head, be who you are meant be Amachi. I have no idea why. Okay. And so, I had one very patient friend, and bless her. She was so patient with me. And I would sit down, we would have this same conversation once a month. And we would go and we'd have Thai food, and then we'd go to Starbucks and we'd sit and have coffee, and I'd go, be who you are. What does that mean? I'm not freaking Amachi. How am I supposed to be Amachi? How do I get paid for being who I am? I don't understand. On and on and on, over and over again. And she would just go, I'm like, oh, and so I'm sitting there one day at Starbucks, and a friend that I know from events that I've been to walks in, and I just took one look at her. I was like, oh my God, what happened to you? And she's like, I don't know. I just feel everything's wrong and it's all off. And I've been to the doctor and they've sent me to specialists and nobody can tell me what's wrong with me. And it's not right. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's not right. Your aura is fucked. Like, excuse my language. It's just like, oh my God. I'm like, stand still. And I shoved her back in her body and I readjusted it and I smoothed it all out and I healed it all up. And it took me like 3 minutes, right? I was just like, bing, bing, boom, right? And I'd look at her, I was like, better? And she's like, oh, yes, thank you so much. I said, good, go get your coffee, join us. And I go back and I sit down and I come back and I'm going right back into my rant. Be who you are. What, right?
Yeah.
And this friend, she walks up and she comes up on this conversation and she looks at me, her mouth hanging open, and she's like, have you met you? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, I just told you, I went to doctors, I went to specialists, I went to people who have been through decades of education, and they gave me nothing. I didn't even tell you that I had a problem. You noticed it immediately and fixed it in under 5 minutes. Have you met you?
I love it.
Talk about a blind spot, right?
Yes.
A year and a half I've been sitting there going, be who I am. What does that mean?
Oh my gosh, you bring up such a good point, because one of the things that I talk to people about is you have something so unique. And so make sure that you share that with people. And oftentimes you have to ask somebody else.
Yes.
Because you don't see it.
Yeah.
And so, because oftentimes people ask me, well, what's unique about me? I'm like, okay, that's the thing. You're not going to always see it. So you have to ask other people.
Or if,
so
even if
true.
You see it, you may not value it. Because,
Yes.
I knew I was a good healer.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, whatever. I've done this my whole life. Whatever.
Right. Right. So true. You don't value it.
Exactly. And some of it's also that you don't see it. I mean, I carry the energy of change. Yeah. And I didn't see that for a long time. It took me a while of people saying, okay, I need to go away and then I'll come back, right? So they would like leave my life for 3 to 6 months, maybe even 2 years, right? And then they'd come back and then be like, okay, now what, right? It was like, because they just couldn't be around me because they had reached their saturation point for change, right?
Yeah.
I had one friend who went away for 10 years. 10 years. And then she came back and she was like, okay, now what? Every time it's like, no, I mean, you know, we're yeah, what now?
Yeah.
So,
You know what? I had to learn to not take that personally, because that would kill me.
yeah, I took it very personally initially, and then I
Mhm.
realized what was happening, and then I was like,
Yeah.
ah, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
'Cause I'm like, why do all of my friends that get so close to me go MIA? What the heck?
Yeah, they come in really tight, really
Yes.
fast, and then
Yes.
they run away.
Yep. Yep.
And
Exactly.
then you get the funny ones where you're like, you get somebody who you were talking to at a party 2 years before, and they're like, you remember this thing you said to me 2 years ago? I was like, no, but you know, it kind of sounds like me, so could have been. And they're like, oh
Yeah.
my God, you said this thing and it changed my life, and I've been completely
Yeah.
different ever since. And I'm like, glad to help.
Yeah. 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 I
I
love
had
it.
no idea what I said, no
Yeah.
idea that I had said it, no idea that I had impacted their life in that way. But it's just, you know, they were ready and I
Yeah.
had the energy
Yeah.
and I happened to just, because
And
I'm
that's the
psychic
thing.
and I pick that stuff up, you
Exactly. And
know?
I was just gonna say, that's the thing about great healers though, like you, is that spirit works through you.
Mm-hmm.
You are the vessel, the container, and when you do the work and you clear out stuff, spirit's able to work through you even more.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a beautiful thing. One
Yeah.
of the things that I wanted to touch upon is you talked about the container
Mm-hmm.
and clearing out certain things. And one of the things that I love about shamanism, and I'd love for you to speak about this, is that when you have gone through so much turmoil and wounding, is there's this concept about doing a soul retrieval, because you become like fragmented and parts of your soul just kind of become in disarray and go everywhere. And
Yeah.
so there's this concept of soul retrieval and becoming whole again. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you could talk about doing things of that nature.
Yeah, so typically the way I describe it to people is that when you are traumatized and you cannot hold your experience, you leave a piece of yourself behind with the experience to hold it for you until you can bring it home,
Yeah.
until you can integrate the experience. And then you can bring the piece of yourself back. And so with that understanding, what you have to recognize is that every time you pull a piece back, you have a piece of trauma to process.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this tendency that people have right now. They're doing ayahuasca like a party, which is making me nuts, right? I don't do ayahuasca journeys, but
Yeah.
I probably, if I were doing them, I would have stopped in the last few years, because the people are just not respecting the medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to one guy, friend of mine, who had done, I think he said 95 ayahuasca journeys in a year. And
No
he
way.
completely fractured his psyche. He was being feasted on by things, and he was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm evolved. I'm like, no, you're shattered. You're toast.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
like, you need to never do this again, and you need to spend the rest of your life healing from it. You know,
Yeah.
it's not okay, right?
Mm-mm.
And so, you know, this sort of thing happens, and there's a way in which the soul retrieval piece is happening in that way now too. People are hearing about it and they're going, oh, I want to pull them all back at once. And I'm like, no, you really don't.
Yeah.
No. In fact, hell no, right? It's like, I went to an event run, I'm here in the Richmond area, and I went to an event run by a relative beginner. She was speaking from notes, and she ran a guided meditation to retrieve every piece of your soul that was missing,
Oh,
with
wow.
zero aftercare, zero anything. She clearly had no idea what she was doing.
Mm.
And I'm sitting there in the room going, oh crap. And I'm like shoving at all of these pieces of people's selves that they're calling back, going, no,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
everybody's life is going to fall apart if all of these pieces come
Once they
back.
go home, they're going to.
Well, they might not even make it out of the parking
Yeah,
lot with
that's
some
true.
of these people. I'm like, you don't know what people's trauma is. You don't know
Right.
what they've got, right?
Right.
To do that en masse is irresponsible to the nth degree.
Mm-hmm.
And to do it en masse for all of things is borderline criminal in the spiritual world, right?
Yeah.
So I literally was like filtering it out and saying, you can have one. You have one because you opted into this, and it'll be a nice, easy one. And then I stood up and said, you know, thankfully I was doing sessions that day, and I was like, if you had something challenging come back and you need to process, I'm your girl, you know, because I was like, oh, yeah, not okay. I was, oh, but that's what happens, is that people aren't grasping that. And so unless you have a lot of experience processing, either through having done therapy for a while, or you've done a focused series of self-inquiry processes, I don't recommend doing a soul retrieval process on your own.
Yeah.
I really recommend that you have someone to facilitate that, and that you do one at most every 6 months.
Yeah.
At most. Give yourself 6 months to a year to integrate each piece, because it's been gone for a long time, and there's a reason for that. And so, you know, give yourself the time to reintegrate. You know, we tend to push past our own boundaries. We tend to be very reckless with our own psyches and our own well-being. And that's one of the things that I really try and reinforce. We don't actually let people do soul retrieval in the work that we do with them. So the processes that we've been talking about are actually the first steps to becoming a transformational shaman, which is the work that I do in the world, right? And so we don't actually let people do this work until they get to the third part of that process, where they're digging out all their buttons and their triggers, because they're not ready to do it until then. And it's always done in a facilitated process, right? And I really don't like to do it even virtually. I like to do, if we're going to do stuff like that, I want to do it at an event where I'm in person with the person for a series of days, where I get to watch them and make sure they're okay as we get through the other side, right? Anything less is irresponsible.
Those are such good points. Let me go back and touch upon the ayahuasca. So something that I was told is, when I was actually studying at what's called the Intuitive Way, which is a spinoff of the Berkeley Psychic Institute. And the facilitator told me, Jodi, have you ever done any ayahuasca? And I said, no. And she goes, good. She's like, don't plan on it. She's like, that would open up your third eye way too much, because it's already open a lot. And she said, so you may never be able to come back. And I said, okay, I wasn't planning on it. I'm like, I've never done that kind of stuff anyway. And I just completely agree with you that people have been reckless with it. And should be very, very cautious with anything like that. Secondly, I agree with you wholeheartly about the soul retrieval pieces, and to do one at a time, and very slowly, and be very mindful, and also just really just wrap yourself in so much love as you're doing it. I mean, when I was talking about what I was doing with my 5-year-old self, I mean, just that alone was overwhelming, a beautiful process, but overwhelming. I mean, I've done a lot of crying. I've done a lot of journaling. It was heavy. It's been heavy, but I feel like spirit will guide you in what's next. I mean, I feel like my 15-year-old self is next, but I'm just on the threshold of that. And it will happen soon, but I'm just now ending with the 5-year-old self. And she has connected so many dots for me. There was a point in time last year where she came forth and we greeted each other, and telepathically she was telling me, I have stuff to tell you, but you're not ready yet. And when you are ready, I will let you know. And at that time that you're ready, we'll have some discussions. And
you're lucky she wanted to talk to you. A lot of my clients get to their inner child, and the inner child just looks at them and says, I'm not talking to you. I don't trust you. I don't like you. I don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, she basically said, you're not ready to digest what I have to tell you. There were certain flashbacks of memories that came forth that made me really sad, but she's like, I can't tell you all of it because you're just not ready.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think your advice of one at a time is absolutely safe. And that's, yeah, I
Well,
like
and
that.
this is the thing I talk about with people all the time, is that without safety, there is no growth.
Mm,
And so, you know, as the shaman in the process, whether it's the group uh, classes that we do online, or whether it's the live ritual events that we do when we're not in COVID,
yeah.
or, you know, it's just individual one-on-one sessions. Um, the very first primary goal that I have is the single most important thing is to keep everybody safe.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing else matters but that. And as long as I hold that space, growth can happen. But the moment that space is lost, growth falls apart. And this is why, you know, I'm really hardcore in my group programs, and all of my programs, actually. If there's more than one person involved other than me, I am hardcore all around. If anybody attacks anybody else, they're out. No thought, no question, no, you know, excuses, no nothing. You cannot attack someone else. If you can be angry,
Mm-hmm.
and you can come in, if you need to attack somebody, you can attack me, or you can attack my business partner, Kathy. We can hold it. We're okay with it, you know? But if you attack somebody else in the program, we can't have you there because you make the space unsafe, right?
Right.
And so, you know, we're very careful about how we choose the people that we'll allow into the program for that reason. You'll know, you've been on the website, you'll notice you can't sign up on the website.
Yeah.
You have to do an interview with me in order to get in, for that reason.
Yeah.
Because I'm hardcore about it. Because without the safety, nothing happens,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
That's
piece
wise.
that nobody gets.
Yeah. Let's talk about relationships. How fun,
Okay,
right?
that's fun.
I
love
mean,
talking about relationships.
yeah. I mean, both of us, talked about the fact that we were young when we married, and the first time, and we've been through divorces and challenges and things like that. We've talked about codependency, and, you know, that can carry into relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's with bosses, you know, employment, family relationships. I was just talking to a friend last night, and she was just so upset with an experience that she had. And she was like, I opened up too much to him, and now he's, you know, not even responding to some of my texts and this and that, and he's not ready, and just all this stuff, you know, the dynamics that go on with dating and relationships and all that stuff, and like boundaries. And then I've tended to attract, you know, as a single person, people who are on the verge of either being on a divorce, in a divorce, or leaving their relationships, but not quite, or they're just not finished with healing.
Mm-hmm.
And so their mind is still filled with not me as the focus, basically.
Right.
So I'm
Which,
not the chosen. I'm not
about it, is probably a reflection of your childhood.
Exactly.
Right.
So either, you know, my parents not being, I'm not the focus on you know, my dad, you know, is off doing this or that, and I'm trying to get his attention.
Yep. Emotionally
or
unavailable.
Exactly.
Yes.
Emotionally unavailable. So, you know, it's a reflection of all of that family of origin stuff.
Yeah.
So when I realize that, I'm just like, nope, not doing it again.
Right.
You know, that has to be finished. Like, that phase of that person's life has to be finished, you know?
Well, and then there's the other piece that nobody thinks about. They think about who they want, but they don't think about whether or not they are the person the other person would want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you've got your picture in your mind of who this ideal person is that you want to be in relationship with. But, you know, if you look at it through their eyes, are you the person that they would choose? That's the question you have to ask, because if you're saying no to the people who are inappropriate and the right people aren't showing up, it's because there's a disconnect between that. And you have to look at where that is, right? We have a way in which there's so many different pieces and parts about how this goes into relationship. I mean, you know, everything from, you know, the difference between casual and reckless sex, which is huge. I mean, there's casual sex is, I'm horny, you're horny, we're agreeing to have sex because it meets a need for both of us, and we both leave emotionally unscarred. Okay. But what tends to happen with people from this background is, you're horny and I need to feel loved. And so I'm going to give you sex so that you'll make me feel loved. And then you're going to leave and I'm going to feel abandoned. And then I am emotionally scarred by the experience.
I was just going to say, but they're emotionally scarred.
Right. And that's reckless sex.
Yeah.
Right? That's not being honest about what you want out of the
Mm-hmm.
encounter.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore getting hosed because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you made an agreement for something that wasn't actually what you wanted.
Right.
And that's the challenge, right? So, you know, there's the dynamic. What generally happens is what I tend to call the strong woman, nice guy dynamic. And it doesn't matter what gender they are. You just see it most often in the strong woman, nice guy dynamic. So I'm using that dynamic because almost everybody knows somebody in that. Mm-hmm. But gender is irrelevant to it. Uh-huh. But there's a strong person and there's a nice person. And so the strong person sort of steamrolls the nice person, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, it's a toxic dynamic if the people have not done their work, but it's a perfect dynamic if they have, because then there's one person who holds the container and the other person who exists within it, and that everybody's happy, right? It's that yin and yang, that masculine, feminine, tantra type perspective, right? And again, not gender-based. That's, people get hung up on my words. The PC-ness makes me nuts. Yeah. It's like, you know, it's like I'm using the terms that have been used for thousands of years, and I'm going to trust you that you can edit and acknowledge the differences. I'm going to trust that you're a competent human to do that. I'm not trying to be sexist or gender biased, but there's the dynamic that happens is that she, and I'm going to use the strong woman, nice guy just because it's easier. She will get, she's a perfectionist. Mm-hmm. She wants everything to be perfect. She's going to take care of everything. She's going to manage everything. And you are going to help me, pointing at him, right? And he's like, I like to be of service. I find my value by being appreciated, which of course she sucks at. She's terrible at it. She'll find all the things that are wrong and none of the things that are right because she hasn't done her work on that yet, and softening, and she can't find happiness. She can't find appreciation for herself, so she can't find appreciation for others, right?
Yeah.
And so he goes in with the hope that she will finally approve of him, and if he gets anything other than, you know, you suck back from her, he feels like he's vindicated and done his job, and he wants to be of service to her, and she's of service to the world, and that's the dynamic, right? And so you end up with these things where she gets actively aggressive at him and he gets passively aggressive at her, right? Mm-hmm. And you end up with this power struggle.
That was my first marriage.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
We would look at each other and go, we'd have the same conversation over and 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 over. And I was just like, I just couldn't make it stop. And I was like, we need to go to therapy. He's like, I'm not telling anybody about therapy. You know, I'm not telling anybody our stuff. And I was like, well, we're not fixing it and I'm not happy.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want a divorce. And he said, I'll go to therapy. And I said, no, not good enough. And he's like, what? I said, now you're going to therapy, not because you care that I'm unhappy, but because you don't want to be divorced. And that's not enough for me, you know? And I was like, yeah, too little, too late. Right. Yeah. But that's what happens in those dynamics. Right. Yeah. And so there's so many pieces and parts from this where people get hurt, and, you know, our dynamic when you come out of this childhood is when you feel hurt, the other person becomes the enemy. Okay. Absolutely. So I'm going to give people a little a tool that you can use that works really well. Before you get to yell at the other person, or, you know, at the other person, whatever it is, right? Before you get to do that, you must first remember what you love about them and tell them 2 things that you love about them. Mm-hmm. And then, and only then, can you say what you're upset about. And what you're going to discover is that you just have to remind yourself, look, he's not the enemy, she's not the enemy, right? You know,
Right.
it's just, they're not the enemy, right? And that, you know, to assume positive intent, right?
Yes.
The part
Yes.
of the other person, which
Mm-hmm.
we don't, right? We don't
Right.
assume positive intent. And so you must give them that. And then when you do that, two things happen. One, you remind yourself that they're not the enemy and that they do love you, right? And you take them out of defensive mode because you've appreciated them,
Yes.
right? And so now you're going to phrase it better because you remember they love you. And they're going to receive it better because they know that you love them,
Yes.
right? And so now you're going to have a better, more productive conversation than, why couldn't you take the garbage out again? Ah, right? You always do
Exactly.
this. I hate this about you. Right?
No, that's great advice. That is such great. In fact, John Gottman, you know, he is like
Yes.
the leader on all of this, you know.
Yep.
He talks about that same thing. You know, if you can sandwich, you know, the positive and the appreciation before any of the can you kind of tweak this, you know, then they're going to receive that so much better.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was the front runner on, you know, observing couples, like a ton of couples, like
Yeah.
literally videotaping them.
Yep.
And he said, you know, even the bids for connection, like if somebody like in the couple said, oh, look at that sailboat, and the other person in the couple just said, or didn't even say anything,
Right.
that's nothing, you know.
Yeah.
But if the other person said, oh yeah, that's a nice sailboat too, yeah, where should we go on that sailboat? If we had that sailboat, where would we go? You know what I mean?
Right.
That is the connective piece. So
Yeah.
but I love that, like, they're not the enemy, and just remember that they do love you. And yeah, I mean, the first marriage for me, like, we were both so young, we hadn't done our inner work. And you know, he was 2 years younger than I was. And he was basically like, oh, okay, you want to be a broadcaster? I'll follow you. You know, he hadn't finished school. He hadn't um, basically solidified what he wanted as a person. And I mean, that gets old.
Yeah.
Once you do solidify what you want as a person, you're going to be like, whatever, you know? So, I mean, it was a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I was him in my relationship. I really was, which is odd to think of because I'm usually the dominant one. You know, I'm the stand up and whack people over the head person, or I used to be. You know, my husband was very different than anyone I'd ever met, and I turned myself into a pretzel. I wanted to become the person that he wanted me to be, and so he saw himself as the knight in shining armor, so I turned myself into the damsel in distress. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then, you know, after a year or two, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm not the damsel in distress, and I'm really tired of this.
Yes.
I'm like, you know, and I just stood up and I took my power back, and he didn't know what to do with that because, you know, that wasn't what he signed on for. And it was entirely my fault. I'd been lying to him the whole time about who I was, you
That's what
know?
my ex said. He's like,
Yeah.
I haven't told you how I felt, you know?
Yeah.
But with me, I learned so many lessons about appreciation. Like, I was not appreciating him, you know? And so I learned so much about myself. And I truly feel that he was a soulmate in the fact that he was such a catalyst for my growth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, he launched me into such spiritual growth. I mean, the rug was ripped from under me at that point in my life. And I had to go like, whoa, I had to get my bearings with everything. It was like really starting over. It was like a rebirth with everything. And so, I mean, oftentimes I feel like I actually have thanked him in real life, but oftentimes, I mean, when I'm praying and just even meditating, I really do thank him, because it's because of that my whole life has really changed. I do feel like sometimes the dynamic with relationships has shifted, though, and I have to be careful with this, because sometimes if I don't set clear boundaries, I tend to lose myself in a relationship, and I have to pull back that power. and
Yeah.
not turn myself into a pretzel like you talk about.
Well, that's actually a culturally infused concept. We are taught through movies and stories and mythos from our culture that the way to be in a truly loving relationship is for me to hand over responsibility for my well-being to you, and for you to hand your responsibility for your well-being to me. And that is actually a recipe for a power struggle and a disaster, because when you don't hold your own power, you end up needy. And the moment that person can't be there for you, you no longer have the ability to go and get what you need from somewhere else,
Right.
because they're holding your power. And so you become needy and demanding and overbearing, and they become, you know, defensive and pushy, and, you know, they don't want to deal with it. And it's entirely the fault of, you know, the happily ever after stories and all of that. And you know, so really what I tell people is you have to go in with the intention of holding your own power, of being your own person within the relationship, and to recognize that at any moment the relationship could end. By the nature of the fact that we are mortal, all relationships end. And this happily ever after is a complete myth within this reality, right? And so when you can know that that's the case, then it's easier to not just like give yourself over. The other part of that is that it's a very childlike thing to do. To hand over your well-being to another is what children do with their parents, right? It's like, oh, mommy and daddy will take care of me, because they can't take care of themselves. So it's appropriate for them, but it is not appropriate for us.
Right.
But because we didn't get that as children, we want to do that with our partner, and then we end up in this dynamic as well. So it's both culturally enforced, and it's also, you know, enforced from our childhood.
Yeah. So, and getting to the balance can be, it can be a challenge, quite frankly. I mean, because I swing from one end of the pendulum to the other. So it's either that, or it's either I am locked in fear and don't move forward into any relationship because I'm like, yeah, there's not a guarantee. It could end at any time. So you know what? If there's not a guarantee, I'm going to stay right here because I'm happy with my life, you know? So yeah, it can be a challenge. So I have to talk to myself and say, you know what? There is no guarantee, and that's okay.
Right.
And you know what? I am happy if it ended. That's fine, because I am happy alone, and that's okay.
Well,
And so it's like relaxing.
Yeah, and looking back at past relationships that you managed to survive when they ended
Exactly.
is a way to say, look, see, we do know how to survive this.
Right.
We've done it before. Yes, it'll hurt, and I'll be sad, and then I'll get up and I'll go on with my life. And that's how that's going to be, you know?
Right.
But you know, but I don't regret having had any of these relationships. So why should I prevent myself from having any additional ones?
Right. The growth that happens.
Exactly.
Right. And right now, the masculine and feminine energy is really being talked about as far as balancing, not only within ourselves, but really being in our feminine energy, because I feel like that dynamic can really get chaotic. And what I mean, and I'm not, as you said, Kelly, not trying to be biased in one way or the other, but I feel like if a man is in his wounded feminine or wounded masculine, things can go haywire, and vice versa.
Right.
If a woman has wounded feminine or masculine energy, and they're projecting on each other with those wounded energies, the relationship can really get crazy.
Well, you're not relating, you're projecting.
Exactly.
You're relating with yourself instead of relating with the other person.
Right.
You know? And that's the other piece that I want to just, as long as we're talking about relationships, I want to just say, if you have ever said, I'm not going to say anything to save the relationship, you know, I'm going to keep this to myself to save the relationship, right? The moment you stop speaking your truth in a relationship, you have killed it, because you've stopped relating.
Good point.
And so keeping anything to yourself that is your truth, right, that is important to you, I'm not talking about, I'm not going to tell her that I picked up the garbage that she didn't do because I'm just going to let that go or whatever, little things, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about speaking your truth. I need this to be happy, right? I'm not happy right now. Whatever it is that you are not saying, and to quote unquote save the relationship is actually killing it. So you might as well say it, and that's the only chance it has of surviving.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
Because
it'll fester.
Yeah, because you may stay partners in terms of you may stay partnered, but you will cease to be partners.
Yeah.
Right? Because you'll just become roommates, right?
Yeah.
Because you've stopped relating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So true. Good. Great point, actually. One of the other things that I was thinking about as far as communication too is, if you are afraid of losing somebody and you don't say something, that's just as bad,
Same thing.
because you're not honoring yourself.
Exactly. And you're not sharing who you are with them.
Exactly.
How are they supposed to be able to be, in good relationship with you if you're not telling them who you are?
Mm-hmm.
And exactly what I did with my first marriage. I didn't tell him who I was. He had no chance of making me happy.
Yeah. And like you talked about before, you talked about building a foundation. And the thing is, if you're building a foundation on a lie and it's not really who you are, and it's based on fear as well, you're afraid of losing them. And so you're really not going to share your truth or honoring yourself, then really, what is that relationship? So,
well, and people do this often because they're not good with being alone. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's the key is, one of the things that I talk to all of my students about is, look, one, when you step into working with me, you're doing like 5 years worth of personal growth in 4 months or 10 years worth of personal growth in a year. It's a huge amount that you're doing at once. And I say, like, unless you're in relationship already, don't go looking for a relationship while you're doing this, because you're going to change so fast that there's no way anyone is going to be able to keep up with that. Mm-hmm. And so, everything's going to be short-lived. You might as well just do this and learn to be with yourself, mm-hmm. so that you can then learn to be with others. Right. And that's so important, to learn how to be with yourself. And this is one of the gifts of the pandemic and the quarantine.
I agree.
Is learning how to be alone, learning how to be, in our own spaces. We are in a forced hermitage, mm-hmm. that is now, 6 months later, we are now seeing people stepping into really initiatory processes. Mm-hmm. And, I did an episode of my podcast a few months ago where I was like, okay, we're in hermitage. We're getting ready for an initiation. Here is a grail ritual for your initiation that you can do with me and with everybody in the podcast, and just join your cup into the ritual with everyone. And we did that because I wanted to make it conscious for people, right? Because so many people are going through it, and what's happening, and this is the reason why the civil unrest has been so strong right now, is because people, when you are in a state of discomfort, that discomfort is fuel that you are meant to use to help your transition. Mm-hmm. But if you don't know that, what you do is you look for ways to dissipate the energy. And getting angry about something is a great way to dissipate the energy. Mm-hmm. And so that's why the civil unrest just blew up. That's why all the things that we've been, just tolerating for all these years just suddenly went boom. It's because all these people were in a forced hermitage, and they were all in their discomfort, and they didn't know what to do with it, and so they needed a direction for it. And the civil unrest showed up, and it was a lightning rod for the discomfort to be discharged. Yeah. And not to say that it's not necessary, it's absolutely necessary. The bringing up of the shadows is what happens when you go within. Right.
Yes.
When you get still, all the shadows come to the surface. All the things we don't want to look at come to the light. And it's actually a really good thing that all of these are coming into the light, because it means that there's a chance of clearing them. Right.
Yes.
and you know, people are like, oh, it's so awful, it's so this, it's so that, and it's, you know, all the terrible things that Trump is saying, and you know, all of this that happens. And I'm like, yes, I don't agree with what he's saying, but he's bringing the shadows into the light, right? And you know, there's a purpose that's being served by that. We're seeing what's actually there, because he wouldn't be saying these things if there wasn't support for it, right? And so we're actually seeing it. And you know, not to say that I'm supporting it, but there's a way in which a purpose is being served by it. There's a, you know, there's an awakening that's happening. There's oh, holy crap, I didn't realize this was what was true. You know, because, you know, in my world, it doesn't work that way, but wow, look at all these people who really are feeling that.
I
and
think
it's like, that's important to know. Right?
Oh yeah. I think there's so much transformation going
much
on. And I think even with what Trump is saying, I think it's so symbolic.
Yes.
If you look at it in a symbolic way, you will see the different layers. Yeah. And I just think, like you said, the stillness and the shadows coming up, if you actually embrace it, yeah, the anger, like you said, will catapult you to a different layer. And the crying, like I've been doing, is actually a cleansing process.
Very much. Yes.
And it's actually a beautiful process if you sit with it, and if you're able to actually go through it instead of distract yourself from it, and instead of going around it or trying to navigate, you know, a different way.
Yeah.
You go through it.
Yeah. It's the fastest way out is straight through the middle.
Exactly.
Right? That's the thing. I actually had an experience of this. It's been a very long time since I've hit a deep level of discomfort, just because I've been doing my work hardcore for 25 years now. So, you know, it's, you know, you get to a point where you've done a lot of the stuff. But I had this happen to me, like, I don't know, 4 days ago. My business is taking off. And, you know, I'm getting a lot new students. I've got new coaches coming in, working with me. I'm building, you know, the structure and the whole thing for it to scale, and for me to have the ability to help more people. And I was having this moment of, you know, we have a fire as often as we can in our fire pit in the backyard. And it's my quiet time. It's my time to sort of unpack things. And, you know, my husband and I just sit and stare at the fire, you know.
I love that.
And I had this moment where I was like, I was looking for something to be angry at him about. And I was like, and I was sitting there going, why am I wanting to be angry with my husband? He is a lovely human who has done nothing wrong. Why am I looking for this? And I was like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. I'm really uncomfortable, and I'm trying to discharge it. And I'm like, okay, well, that's inappropriate. And let's use this. Why am I uncomfortable? What is the fear, right? And I went into it, and I was like, oh, the fear is that I'm going to lose my freedom. That the better known I get, that I'm going to just not have any freedom, because that's my number one value, is freedom. I have walked away from tens of thousands of dollars in my life, and relationships, and, you know, groups, and you name it, because I wanted my freedom. And so, you know, I literally had to sit with it, because I had had a very busy few weeks doing lots and lots of calls and stuff. And I just felt overdone. And I was like, okay, so what do I need to do? And I said, I need to limit it to 2 calls a day that I will do with people for, you know, new client calls, right? And immediately the discomfort just dissipated. It's like, oh, okay, you're gonna take care of me? Okay. And then of course I did what you normally do, because we're like this. When I sat down the next day to actually make the modification on my scheduler, which allows me to say how many calls a day I have, and it was at 4. I said, well, maybe I'll just make it 3. And I went, no.
Yep.
The agreement was 2. Let's make it 2. Yep. And see how we feel, right?
Right.
And if we feel we have more room for more at 2, then we'll go to 3. But let's do what we promised.
Yeah. Right? What is that voice that tries to negotiate what we know honors ourselves?
Well, it's that voice of our parents, really. It's the voice of, you know, not good enough, right? Not enough, not you're just not doing enough, right?
Thank you for helping me identify that, because I'm like, what is that? It's almost like the little devil on her shoulder. That's what that is. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's that voice that we internalized as a child that said we got to do more, be more, how to be good enough.
Oh my gosh.
You know, I have to be 10 times better than everybody else just so that I can be good enough.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Number one, thank you so much for sharing that personal experience.
Yeah.
Yes. That resonates so much with me. And then thank you for helping me identify that, because my sister, she has been going through such a difficult time. And she was like, I don't know why I always have to, when I know I need to stop, I just keep going. And it's like this work ethic. And I go, I know, it's dad, huh? Or it's grandpa. And she goes, yes. She goes, we call it work ethic, but it's not. And I go, I know, it's the not
self-abuse.
Yeah. And it's like, it's like self-masochism almost.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and then there's spiritual masochism too.
Yes.
I want to mention that because
that's a good point.
I was a spiritual masochist. I took pride in being a spiritual masochist for a long time, you know, and it's fastest way out is through the middle, right? So you think, oh, well then, you know, I'm just going to dive into the middle of it, whether I have the bandwidth for it or not. Right. And there was no sense, it was the recklessness, right? The spiritual masochism is a recklessness with your own well-being and your own ability to integrate, right? I've actually, you know, one of the things I've built into my year-long process is every 2 months, you take 2 weeks off. And it's because you need integration time. When you're learning new ways of being at that level, you need integration in time, especially since I'm teaching metaphysics at the same time as I'm teaching personal growth. So you're literally getting massive numbers of years of education in 2 different topics at once. And you know, what tends to happen is that when they get overwhelmed with the personal growth work, they go deep into the magic. And then they get lost in the magic, and they get obsessed with the magic and doing the magic, and you know, and I have to say, okay, sit down and do nothing. One of my clients is actually in this state right now, and I was like, do nothing for 2 weeks. You are not allowed to do any magic. You're not allowed to look into the spirit world. You're not allowed to watch any podcasts or videos or, you know, nothing. You can't do any of the exercises from the program. You will sit still for 2 weeks and be in the physical, because he went so far out. He was just like fractalizing, right? He was just, you know, and I'm like, dude, bring it back, right?
Yeah.
And then the next stage after that was, okay, now sit with the earth. And I'm like, I don't want you to put your energy into the earth. I don't want you to feel into the earth. I don't want you to talk to Mother Earth. I don't want you to do anything. You're going to sit your butt on the ground with your back against the tree, and you're going to be aware of your body with your butt on the ground and your back on the tree. And that's it, right? Because the stillness is necessary, right?
I'm laughing because I'm just thinking that is something you would probably do with me. Oh my gosh.
And you know, and each time I give this assignment to somebody, they resist and resist and resist and resist. Mm-hmm. And then when they do it, they go, oh, I get it now. I understand why you gave me this.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I was getting really attached to, and I was, you know, defining myself based on this. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm like, yes, it's a practice you do, not who you are.
Right.
And you need to treat it appropriately, right?
Yeah.
You cannot just throw yourself willy-nilly into a space you don't understand yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's start there.
So true.
You know?
So true. Oh my gosh.
You know, this is a spirit world, you know, everybody's like, oh, well, my guardian angel will save me. And your guardian angel's going, oh my God, they just walked into a biker bar. What the hell are they thinking? You know, it's like, get out of the biker bar. The demons are there. Leave them alone.
Seriously.
And your guardian angel is screaming at you, and you can't hear them because you're going, oh, look at this. This is kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you got to learn how to talk to your guides before you go wandering in the ethers.
Exactly. Well, the astral world and the ethers are like the wild, wild west. And Absolutely. It's like, if you don't know how to navigate that place, ooh, it can be scary.
Yeah. And you know, there are lovely places with nice people, and there are biker bars with things that will bite you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
And you know, some of them will trap you and keep you. Unless you you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, it's just like, yeah, some days I'm just like, sit down.
Yeah, it's so funny.
down.
But that even goes back to the experience I had last night, talking about how that one line just resonated with me, just like intrinsically being worth so much. You're just you are worth everything
Yeah.
to divinity. You are divine. You
Yeah.
are divinity. Just doing nothing. And it's funny, I'll tell you the exact moment that took me back to. If you rewound a little bit to that night before I read that line on your website,
Mhm.
I had gone shopping. I was eating a sandwich with chips. And I was like, this is my life. I'm in my car eating. I'm like, this is my life right now. I'm like, what am I contributing? Oh my gosh. And I just started thinking, like, what am I doing right now? I am in my car eating. It was literally like 10:30 at night. I'm like eating my dinner at 10:30 at night. I'm eating chips in my car with a sandwich. What in the heck am I doing? And I'm like, this is my life. And I just like, oh my gosh. Then I came home. I was like doing some research for today, reading your website. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I just start crying. I'm like, I absolutely can just eat chips and a sandwich. I don't care what time it is at night. I can be doing nothing and I am worth it.
Yes.
So it's just like, you know, if we need to be still for as long as we need to be still, it's fine.
Yeah.
We need to process, you know?
So there was so years ago, 20 years ago, 22 years ago now, I went to Carolyn Mesa's Anatomy of the Spirit at Omega Institute. And
Oh, I love
I
that.
was in the you know how they have the little gift shop where you can buy copies of the recordings and stuff. And I picked up a recording of an event that I wasn't at, which was called Kabbalah and Ecstasy by Jason Schulman, who runs Non-Dualistic Healing. He's actually going to be on my podcast in a couple of weeks. I'm very excited.
Very
so
cool.
yeah, this is my first chance to talk to him in 22 years of listening to this thing over and over again. So I'm just super excited. But he did this beautiful meditation. I mean, oh my God, it's just such a stunning meditation. And the premise of the meditation was that God is perfection. And that therefore, God does not need our perfection. What God values in us is our imperfections, because it is the thing that God cannot be.
Yes.
And I was like, oh.
Yes.
You know, that was so huge for me when I first heard that. I was just like, yes, that makes so much sense.
That gives me chills. I love that.
Yeah, and he just walked you through this guided meditation of just giving your imperfections as your gift to God, not to get rid of them, but to just say, these are my gift to you, and they're still mine, but I'm sharing them with you. Right?
Here's my beautiful disaster.
Here's my beautiful disaster. Aren't you excited? Right? Yeah.
I love that. And you know, I was speaking at a conference a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about authenticity. And it was just like, I said, you know what? People are so worried about being just perfect. And I said, actually, and I'm a victim of that. I said, but let me just tell you this. Be your imperfect self, because that's actually what draws people to you, is your imperfections. That's what makes you relatable. Absolutely. And so I told them this story about how back in the day when I was in a pageant, I said, the judge came to me and said, do you normally say yeah? And I said, yeah. And he said, then don't say yes. Right. But I don't want that groomed girl that turns on a dime and, you know, says yes just properly. I want you to say yeah. I want the girl that gets off her skateboard or surfboard or whatever you normally do. I want that, because we want authenticity. And that was like a breath of fresh air. Absolutely. Yeah. I had been used to competing at the time in Utah. And Utah's a whole different story than California.
Yes,
I
it
mean,
is.
they're so coiffed and, all that jazz. And I was just like, oh, okay. You mean I can just be myself? Perfect. I can bring it.
Yeah. Rock on.
Yeah, exactly. Rock on. So I was just telling, the audience in that conference, just bring you. And so I love what you said, Kelly. Like, God just loves us being imperfect, and that's our gift to him. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it blew my mind, and he had so many great things in that program. That it's been such a gift over the years to listen to it. So I'm super excited to hear what he has to say. And we're recording on the 30th, so it'll come out a couple days after that. But
Awesome. And people,
we didn't say it was Spirit Sherpa is the podcast.
Yes, I was just going to say,
yeah.
Spirit Sherpa.
Yeah.
You've got to check out Kelly's podcast. You are amazing, and I am so grateful that you've been on this show. We had some technical difficulties before this.
We had a little resistance to coming onto the call.
yeah, but thank goodness for Kelly's technical brain as well, her engineer brain. She walked me through some stuff, so that's awesome. But I mean, you've got to go on her website as well, because not only are you going to see the different classes that she offers, but what she can bring you as well. And you've been just a gift. So thank you so much for being on Guided.
My pleasure. There's, I just want to say there's, if you go to Facebook, I have a group called Spirit Sherpa by Kelle Sparta. And I highly recommend joining that group, because I do all kinds of lives, and I post material there and videos and information and stuff like that. So it's a great way to just get more information.
Absolutely.
And you can reach out to me on Messenger there too. So
perfect. Yeah. Now, for the beginner spiritualist who is just on their journey, maybe they're just dipping into shamanism or meditation or what have you, what would you say to them as far as just getting started?
Well, so the thing that I'm going to say is that it's very easy. And this is actually why I created my podcast, because it's very easy. And my mother raised me in this. So for 40 years plus, I've been in the New Age movement and the spiritual world and whatever. And I've been watching people in their journeys for all this time. And what I see happen pretty consistently is people come in because they're unhappy with their life in some way. And they come into the spiritual world looking for a magic pill, which, by the way, here's a spoiler alert, there is no magic pill, right? And so they come in looking for the magic pill, and they get distracted by the bright and shiny. Ooh, tarot cards, ooh, angels, ooh, whatever, crystals, right? And they will lose their way for 2 to 5 years on average. Mm-hmm. And so I actually started the podcast because I wanted to shorten that distance. I wanted people to do the entire bright, shiny ADD binge in like a week, right? If you sit down and listen, I've got 120 episodes. It takes 60 hours to listen to them because they're half an hour each. You can binge it all in a week, and then you can be like, right, I came here because I was unhappy. Let me fix that now, right? And that's really why I created the podcast, was to really intentionally shorten that distance for people, because it's very easy to lose track of why you came in favor of trying to go into the bright and shiny, because it's so much more fun than dealing with your crap, right? Shadow work is not fun, but it is freeing, right? Yes. It is so freeing.
So rewarding.
And yeah, it's the best thing you'll ever do. It's the best, hardest thing you'll ever do, right? Mm-hmm. And it makes, every time you do something really hard in your shadow work, it makes the whole rest of your life easier.
Absolutely.
And so, when you look at it and go, oh, I don't think I want to do that, think about how hard your life is right now and use that as your motivation to do the work, right? Because that's the piece, is that you don't want to lose track of why you came. You want to pay attention to the fact that you came because there's something missing, right? You're not happy, you feel unfulfilled in some way, you're not on your purpose, you're not in your power, you feel adrift or lost. There's a reason you came to this. And that reason is the motivation. And if you forget it, you end up in the land of the lotus eaters. Which,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
if you know the mythology, it's just, you know, you end up in this space where you do nothing but eat and drink all day, and you do pleasure seeking activities, and you forget why you came, and you lose yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And on a macro view, really why you came and incarnated here. You have special gifts.
Right.
I mean, everybody has that signature note that needs to be shared in the choir of humanity. And so that is a beautiful thing that you have created, Kelle. And so I'm so grateful. And
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank
yeah.
you. This has been great. I do want to say one thing about spiritual awakenings, because you said that you come to the planet to do this, right?
Yes.
I just did a Facebook Live on this yesterday, actually. When you're having a spiritual awakening, one of the things that tends to happen is there's this sense of, you know, you'll see the world completely differently, which may mean that, you know, suddenly you see into the astral or whatever, you know, or it could just be that the world looks different. The physical world looks different to you. You wake up with a new perspective, right? And generally what happens is you have this sense of, oh, I'm not on my purpose. What's my purpose? I don't know what my purpose is. I'm supposed to be on my purpose, and I'm late. I'm late for a very important date. I'm trying to say hello, goodbye. I'm late. I was supposed to do this forever ago. I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm late, right? And there's this panic. And then there's this sense of overwhelm because it's so big, right? And there is this thing that happens, and inevitably I hear this from people. It's like, oh, it's so big. I don't know if I can do it. And it's like, look, you're not going to do it right now. You don't have to do it right now. And you're not ready to do it right now. And you may not even be asked to do something big. You may just be a cog in a very big machine and be feeling that, because many people are, right? And even if you're asked to do something big, which for me, I hit that very early on. I was like, oh, there's going to be something big. And I feel it coming now. It's coming now. It's coming to fruition. And I've hit this point in many times across my life where I've been like, each time. I'm like, oh, it's so big, it's so big, it's so big. And now that I'm here, and now that it's coming to fruition, I'm looking at it and going, and I'm hearing the echoes of all of those panic moments, right? And none of them are valid for me now. I'm looking at it and going, oh yeah, I got this, no problem, right? And that's how you know you're ready, is when you look at it and go, oh yeah, I got this. I'm ready, right? So if you're waking up and you're having that I'm late moment, you're not late, okay? That's your parents talking to you. You are right on time. Whenever your awakening happened was pre-programmed, and you are right on time. So you can let that piece go. And the second thing is the overwhelm is about something that isn't here yet. By the time it gets here, you will not be overwhelmed. It's okay.
I love that.
Yeah, just take your steps.
For me, I'm at the point where I'm like, well, what's the next chapter? Okay, so I'm here. I'm just kind of like in the hangman, the tarot, you know, the hangman card. I'm like, okay, so what now? So what now? And it's just like, spirit keeps just going, relax.
Let it evolve.
Exactly. I'm like, okay.
Sit in the soup.
Yeah.
It will come around.
Exactly.
Let it melt.
I keep feeling that bigness, that largeness, and then the next question comes, but how am I going to do it? And the how is not important.
It's not your job.
Exactly. And it's like, hey, cook, get out of the kitchen. I'm the cook. Like the divine saying, I'm the cook.
Yeah.
Get out of the way.
Yeah. I have a phrase I give people for this. It's, we provide the destination and the motivation. The universe provides the navigation. Right? So you say where you're going, and you put one foot in front of the other, and the universe will go poke, 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 poke to point you in the right direction.
Yeah.
As long as you follow instructions, you'll be fine.
Exactly. And it's like, those are the things that I mean when I know those theoretical things. And I'll even say it back to myself. You know these things. Why are you getting uptight?
Right. It's that control thing.
Yeah, and it's a practice.
Yeah.
It's also a practice. You have to practice the things that you know. So yeah, it's one step at a time.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
we're all a little bit of control freak.
Yeah.
Always, you know.
Yeah. But
it's a practice of just letting it go over and over and over again.
I know. And I mean, one of the things that Gabrielle Bernstein reminds me of too is every moment can be a holy instance, you know, where it's like, oh, begin again. We can begin again. Okay. But I thank you so much, Kelle, for reminding me of that like we can just be okay. We're not late for anything.
Nope.
That's programming that we can move out of the way.
Yeah.
We're on time, actually.
Yeah.
We're just on time.
Exactly where you're supposed to be.
We're exactly where we're supposed to be. This has been
minute.
Awesome. This has been just so awesome. I am so glad that we have been just brought together and on each other's paths. We actually were brought together. I didn't mention this before, everybody, but we've been brought together by some really neat, amazing people. So Colm Holland, who I've had on my show, and he's the author of The Secret of the Alchemist, which is a companion volume of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And then also his publicist, who I will be having on my show soon, and that's Gavin Davies. So he's amazing. So, you know, and I don't know if I shared this with you, Kelle, but I don't even know how Gavin found me. But it was just
I don't know either.
You know, Gavin was just like, you know what? Colm's going to be on your show. He'd love it. I'm like, absolutely. And then I was like, I've just been so blessed ever since. Really, I have. And just, I mean, from you to, you know, everybody that's been on my show since then, it's just really, everybody's just blessed my life.
Yeah. The people who have come through my podcast have been just incredible people. And Gavin feeds me a lot of them, actually.
Yes, absolutely.
That's how I met Colm too. So, you know, we were just like, oh, you know, and Colm and I are great friends now too.
I know,
so we're just like hanging out, you know.
So blessed. So, and Colm was just like, you know what, you and Kelle need to get together. And I'm like, absolutely. So, so blessed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan, and everybody, you need to, you know, go and listen to Kelle's podcast, get on her Facebook page, get on her bio and her website. There we go. KelleSparta.com. And thank you for joining us today. Hit the subscribe button, guided. And if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. And if you want more interviews like this, then go to the top right, hit the bell, and hit all, because then you will be notified of all of these amazing interviews. So again, Kelle, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jodi.
Okay.
We're going to have to talk some more.
Absolutely. We will. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Mwah.
Mwah.